book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about some books that contain creatures of the night. This is a 7 on Sunday topic. I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out. You can participate in a topic in the future and also suggest a topic. This week is purely inspired by the fact that it's spooky season. I want to participate in some of the video ideas, but like I don't read really scary stuff. However, I do tend to read some books that involve creatures of the night. If you guys don't know what creatures of the night are, they're pretty much like paranormal creatures. So without further ado, I'm gonna get straight into the topic with my choices. I'm gonna go with a book that has a few creatures of the night. Angels technically classify as heavenly, celestial creature. They can still also be known as a paranormal creature, especially in this book series that I'm just about to mention. Also chimera. In terms of those creatures of the night, I've got to bring up Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. I was gonna bring up the Harbinger series in place of this originally, but I mean the Harbinger series, as much as I love it, it's very much a go-to angels and demons kind of book. Whereas this book series is not necessarily that. I don't think people enjoy it per se because of the paranormal creature aspect of it. I think a lot of us enjoy it because of its themes and its messages. That being said, I mean, it's still a very good paranormal read that I feel like has been slept on in a way. I mean, it's usually brought up as a book series that has amazing writing and amazing storytelling as well as an amazing message, but I don't think a lot of people talk about the paranormal side of it. I've rarely read any book series that have to do with chimera. Really cool to see that representation. I feel like the creature of the night aspect of it is just mostly overlooked, and there are a lot of angels and demon type of books that seem very cheesy, but when it comes to this book series, I didn't feel that at all. I think I read it for the first time when I was 18 or 19, and I didn't enjoy it as much. As a 25-year-old, I loved this book series and I felt like I could resonate with it even more. I understand why not many people would want to go to it as a paranormal read, but it is a paranormal read that I would highly recommend for any age. Next, I'm going to talk about Fae. Before you assume that I'm going to bring up any Sarah J Maas book, the Iron Fae series, or the Cruel Prince series, think again, because I'm going to be bringing up a book that I started and finished yesterday, and I'm obsessed with it. It's just another take on Fae fiction that I really loved. And that, my friends, is These Hollow Vows by Lexi Ryan. This is one of my new favorite book series ever. The ending just shocked me so much. I'm like a bit hesitant when I go into other kinds of Fae fiction, only because I just want a very good engaging plot line with a Fae magic system that makes sense and that is easy to catch up on. This book really does seem like a fairy tale. I didn't know that it was a Cinderella retelling or reimagining until someone brought it up in, I think, the Bookish Box subscription service group, which was really exciting. So it motivated me even more to pick it up. I picked it up, I read it in like one sitting. The protagonist is actually a human who is kind of like going into this Fae realm, and so they're learning more about the Fae. They grew up hating Fae. Getting to see it from their perspective and getting to hear about their perception of the Fae is just very fascinating. And it also has a few Midsummer Night's Dream influences in there. I love those Shakespearean influences. That's the reason why I loved The Iron King. So this was definitely the reason why I loved These Hollow Vows. This book was absolutely perfect. And if you're wanting a new Fae read, I would definitely say These Hollow Vows is that book. Now I'm gonna bring up a book that I pretty much bring up in almost every single one of my videos these days. The creatures of the night I'm gonna be talking about here are trolls. Yeah, you guys already know I'm gonna bring up the Malediction trilogy. I don't think I've ever read a book series with trolls. If I have read a book series with trolls, trolls have only played a minor part in it. Trolls play a big part in the series, but not only that, it almost resembles Fae fiction to a T. There are even Fae in this world, even though the Fae aren't necessarily touched upon too much. Danielle, maybe you can write a book series about the Fae in this world. That would be great. I just want any kind of spin-off I can possibly get of the Malediction trilogy. It's just never a dull moment, but I feel like a lot of people don't pick this book series up. A lot of people go to what they know. They know Fae, they know vampires, they know werewolves, they know all these other paranormal creatures, but they don't necessarily know trolls except for, you know, maybe those dolls that have like hair that's stuck up like that. I don't know. There's not much representation of trolls when it comes to young adult fiction. I think that's where this book series absolutely shines. If you ever want to read a book series with a new kind of paranormal creature that still feels familiar, it's definitely going to be the Malediction trilogy. I'm I'm just gonna go with multiple paranormal creatures here. Yes, I am gonna be mentioning a Sarah J Maas book. With the Crescent City series, I feel like it's just too hard not to share for a paranormal creatures video because it essentially represents almost every single one of the paranormal creatures out there. You've got fae, for obvious reasons. You've got werewolves, you've got vampires, you've got mer people, you've got sprites, elementals, kelpies, nymphs, water beasts, river spirits, vampires, drakai, dragons, necromancers. You've even got the Umbra Mortises. It's everything you possibly want if you want a good paranormal read with multiple paranormal creatures. This is what I would recommend. With the other books that I mentioned, yes, I would recommend those books for specific reasons and for specific kind of characters. But if you're just wanting any kind of paranormal creature under the sun, and if you're wanting something that kind of feels a lot more modern as opposed to a medieval fantasy, then I would highly recommend House of Earth and Blood. The second book's gonna come out February of next year. I am so excited. That is my most anticipated release of next year. I'm gonna bring zombies up next. The reason why I don't actually read zombie fiction that much is because I'm not a big fan of like zombie fiction when it comes to book series or when it even comes to TV series. A lot of people like TV shows like The Walking Dead or movies like World War Z. I don't actually understand the appeal when it comes to zombies. Zombies have always like not just grossed me out, they literally do nothing but infect people. I think the story surrounding them is probably more interesting than the creatures themselves. And so that kind of speaks for the book that I'm going to bring up, Sky Hunter by Marie Lu. I don't tend to read zombie fiction. I don't tend to read fiction about any infected kind of creature whatsoever. However, Sky Hunter really impressed me, mostly because of the characters and how they are able to face these threats. I understand the big turnoff from this book are the zombie-like characters, but if zombies are something you like to read about, if that threat is something that you like to read about, then Sky Hunter by Marie Lu has you covered. This young adult book series might not look like it deals with kind of zombie-like creatures, but it does. I love the characters surrounding those creatures. I didn't think that I would be talking about zombies in this video, but I wanted to bring something different up based on what other people might want to read. This second last book that I'm gonna mention has to do with dragons. I mean, this is like a different kind of dragon fiction as opposed to anything that's high fantasy. The book series that I'm gonna bring up is technically a urban fantasy that kind of feels like a dystopian. The Talon Saga by Julie Kagawa. If that is something that you prefer, if you do like young adult dystopian, I think you will love the Talon Saga because it's literally about dragon shifters who are trying to escape their corrupt system. They're essentially born and raised to either be breeders or conform under Talon. And then you've got their hunters known as St. George who are meant to slay these dragons. And they don't actually know that dragons are technically working for an organization that not all of them believe in. I love that concept. I feel like no one actually talks about Talon that much here in the booktube community, but that's because that I don't think everybody reads the entire series. It's a 5-book series, and it's a book series that I'd actually recommend, like, if you want to have like a good, fun, young adult dystopian time, you just binge read the entire series. I do have to say, the love triangle was definitely a waste of time, but it's not the main focus of the series. It definitely does build tension up. From the very beginning, you just know who the protagonist is going to end up with anyway. Now we end off with a series that has multiple paranormal creatures. I think this series is mostly known for having vampires, but if you read up to the end of the first book, or if you actually read to the second book, you'll realize that yes, while the vampires do play a big part and a big role in the story, the main race we're talking about here is not necessarily vampires. There are gargoyles, there are witches, there are dragons, there are multiple paranormal creatures in this book series, and that's why I love it. Crave by Tracy Wolf, literally just a complete guilty pleasure book series, but it has paranormal creatures, and that's just an absolute bonus for me. I'd say this is the perfect Halloween read if you're wanting to read something that's not too scary, but it's also kind of like a parody. So the first Crave book essentially feels a lot like a parody to Twilight. There's literally a scene where the love interest gives the main character the book of Twilight, just to tease her. This is marketed as kind of like the next Twilight, even though it's not really. It's something completely different. It takes place in a boarding school full of paranormal creatures. But the first book, because it follows a character who's very possessive and just very overly protective, I just loved the funny callbacks. Even though I've never read Twilight myself, a lot of people who have read Twilight appreciate it because it just had them laughing. If you're wanting something that technically does pick on Twilight, but also turns a bunch of those tropes on their heads, trust me, like, as much as there is a character who is very overprotective and possessive, they're not like the main part of the story, so you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about being annoyed about them because, trust me, it does get better. And the book series comes into its own. It's literally not a copy of Twilight whatsoever. The first book might seem like it is because there is the build-up and the twist, but it's not. But if you're wanting something that has those kind of paranormal creatures and that is just purely young adult paranormal romance, this is your book series. Like, you don't have to read this book series for substance. I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to enjoy it, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at gswizzlebooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle, and also I'm at TikTok. I'm at gswizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there as well. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
Started out with half and I flipped it in a double. Started out with half and I flipped it in a double.